Women's Week in Provincetown is an epic annual event.
And Wing Women Weekend is going to make it even epicer.
It's not a word, Barb, epicer.
Epicist. Delicious. I don't know. What do I look like? A worditarian? All I know is that Wing Women Weekend is going to be the event of 2024.
Yep, October 16th through 20th is when we are going to Provincetown, one of America's gayest communities, for learning, fun, friendship, and community. Barb and I are later in life and divorce experts, but this event is for everyone. For those who are just beginning to consider their sexuality, to those who have come out years ago.
There's tons of amazing activities available for queer women of all kinds taking place. Everything from tea dances to whale watching, and you can partake in that with your new group of gay besties, aka your Wing Women.
And we assembled some incredible experts to lead workshops on things like lesbian dating, lesbian couples workshops, business adventure, and more. And all of these women, except for one, are later in life lesbians.
So let us be your co-pilots as we enjoy some fantastic activities together designed for queer women of all kinds and for all ages.
Think of it as summer camp, but for grown women and gayer. You'll make friends and have experiences unlike any other, and you'll have us as your wing women.
Early bird pricing ends August 7th, so register with the coupon code EARLYBIRD to save. Sign up at www.wingwomenweekend.com. That's wingwomenweekend.com.
Hey queer friends, are you ready to be inspired? Welcome to Season 5 of Coming Out and Beyond, a podcast that shares stories from the LGBTQIA+ community. Here's your host, Anne-Marie Zanzal.
Have you ever felt so disconnected from your body that you do not know what you feel or what you want? This is Anne-Marie Zanzal, and welcome back to another episode of Coming Out Beyond LGBTQIA+ Stories. And I actually have somebody who has an answer on the show today for that. Her name is Juliana Allen, and she is a later in life lesbian. We love our later in life lesbians, and a somatic breathwork facilitator. She specializes in working with humans who have been disconnected from their bodies and helps guide them to reclaiming their authentic selves. Juliana, welcome to the show today.
Yay! Thank you so much for having me. It is my pleasure to be chatting with you. So thank you.
So my first question I ask everybody is, tell me your story. So let's hear your story.
Gosh.
And I'm talking really about your queer story.
Yeah. I was like, well, it all started in 19.
We only have 45 minutes.
Right, exactly. Well, let's see. So I spent my entire life running from my body. Like I started dancing ballet when I was 4. And that was kind of the first thing about like, no, you are who you're supposed to be, right? Like ballet is very much about the image, very much about being a certain version of yourself, right? And that just kind of carried on throughout my whole life. When I was a teen, I struggled with an eating disorder for a really long time. Super, super disconnected. And I had no idea what my body was asking for at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I did the things that I was supposed to do, right? I got married, had a couple kids, and then it was my last kiddo was born in May 2020, which is funny because that was the
beginning of the pandemic.
Oh my God. It was just, and I had a 3-year-old.
Terrifying for you.
Oh, yes. Oh, my oldest was 3 at the time. And then my littlest was born in May. And like after I had him, I just like something was off. Like there was something inside of me that I couldn't ignore anymore. And I was like, what the hell is happening? Like I just didn't know, right? Like I spent my whole life running from who I was. And that was, I lovingly refer to that time as the beginning of the end.
Yeah,
Um,
it was a catalyst moment. It
it
was a
was,
when, and a lot of times, women often have it after that when they get pregnant or after they or while they're pregnant. I've had so many people reach out to me while they're pregnant or after their
yeah,
pregnancy, and so that's really normal to be
yeah,
like, what? Because giving birth is such a visceral body experience, right?
yeah,
You are totally in your body
yes, yes,
for those 8 hours or whatever. And
yeah.
it's like often the first time for us.
Yeah, I don't think I ever put that together actually. What, because I didn't really understand why like that was the time that it was just like something is off. And then, trying to recover from that delivery was not easy. Like, I mean, it was the beginning of a pandemic. We were isolated. My ex-husband is a first responder, and so it's like I was on my own, like from
Mhm.
the get-go with it. And it was, it just became so loud that I couldn't ignore it anymore. And I remember I was seeing a naturopath at the time, and she just looked at me and she was like, "You've got to figure something out. Like, I don't know what you have to figure out, but you've got to figure something out." And so I was like, damn it, because I knew.
Well,
Like,
yeah, I actually had somebody reach out to me the other day, and we were chatting, and she goes, "I'm afraid to look because I know
mhm,
the answer."
mhm,
She knows the answer that she is gay and she needs to leave her husband, but she doesn't want to.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. And it
Yeah.
took a long time. Like it took me probably a year to be able to say those words just to myself.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
then it took me probably another year to go to my ex-husband and say, I actually want to hear what I did to come out to him.
I would love to.
It was, it's very endearing now that I say it, but I like what we were both working from home at the time. My office was upstairs, his was down. And I just walked into his office one morning and I was like, "Hey, hun, I think I'm gay." Like gay, like all the way gay, not just like bi gay, but like all the way gay. And I just like started rambling, and he just looked at me and he was like, "Okay, well, we should probably talk about that." I was like, "Yeah, we probably should talk about that." It was like, oh, sweet version of me that didn't know, like,
Yeah.
yeah, very
Yeah.
sweet.
It is actually quite endearing. I agree.
It, it, it was, yeah, when I look back at that version of myself, I'm like,
Get some
oh,
milk for dinner.
yeah, I think I'm gay, like all the way gay. Here we are.
Oh, and here we are. So, what happened next?
Oh my God. So I walked into his office, told him I was gay, and I had never, so I came out as a lesbian before I had ever kissed a woman. Yeah, anything. Like never held
Me,
hands with a woman, any of
me
that.
too. But like let's put this in context.
Yeah,
When kids are little and kids are in teenage years, and they're really really into boys and girls, right?
no,
We need to tell them go sleep with that boy to make sure you're straight.
true. Yeah,
So your heart knew what it wanted.
it
And
did.
I am one of those where similar that way. I came out with uh no relationship with a woman, not having kissed a woman, just knowing that I needed to go and explore
Yeah.
what all these incredibly confusing feelings I was feeling.
Yeah, that was exactly where I was too. And I wasn't at the point yet where I wanted to leave my marriage.
Mhm. Most of
So
us are.
I,
Yeah.
I mean, he was very stable,
Mhm.
like, uh, I alluded to, or I mentioned that I had an eating disorder for a long time.
Mhm.
And like, I never thought that I would be where I was, right? Like, it wasn't great. It wasn't great. And so I didn't think that I'd be able to get married and have kids and, live this life. Like I had everything. I had
Mhm.
everything I was supposed to have that was supposed to make me happy, and I was dying inside.
You need to read my book because
Yeah. Tell
because
me.
the exact same, my book is Authentic Peace. You can find it on Amazon. And the thing is that I had it. I checked all the boxes.
Okay.
I married a man that was did well, did well financially. We had a great friendship built around our children. We had four of them. We were a very well-known family in town. I served as the pastor of two different churches on two different sides of the hill. I mean, like we were, I had it all.
Yeah.
And I didn't, I was like, why am I not happy? Like I did, I'm an overachiever, like a lot of late in life lesbians. And,
Ooh.
and it's like, well, I did everything right. I'm supposed to be happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, and the only thing is I didn't do what was right for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And that I didn't know what was right for me at
Right.
all. And I think
Yeah.
like, I mean, it's such an interesting thing with like later in life lesbians because it's like we did what we were supposed to do
Hmm.
without being like, what do I want? And it's like people would tell me, listen to your body, listen to your body. And I'd be like, I don't know how to do that.
Hmm.
Like I didn't know what that meant.
Hmm.
And so it's like, why, of course I didn't know. Of course I didn't
And a lot of late in life lesbians also have had eating disorders.
know.
You are not the first person I've met. I would say it is fairly common in my groups.
Yeah.
I I have the mutual support groups, and it's fairly common that I always have one or two people in the group at any given time
Yeah.
that has struggled with eating disorders, still struggling with eating disorders. And how is that all connected?
It's a
Yeah.
fascinating connection, actually, because I've noticed that as well. Like the people that I tend to work with, it's like one of two camps, right? Like eating disorders, late in life lesbians, oftentimes both. And my anecdotal theory on it is
Mhm.
uh, I spent my whole life like overriding my body's needs, overriding the most basic biological needs, right? Like it is uncomfortable to have an eating disorder.
Mhm.
Like I don't care what eating disorder we're talking about, like you're overriding your body's signals, what your body is telling you, right? Like you're just overriding it. And I overrid mine for like 15 years. And like why would I have known? Like if I'm overriding the most basic things in my body, why would I ever ask myself who am I sexually
Yeah,
attracted
I
to?
think that makes a lot of sense because you're denying yourself food, you're denying
Totally.
or you're over
Yeah.
exercising. Let me
Doesn't
ask
matter.
you
Yeah.
something. I had a child that was in the dance world, so I'm
Yeah.
pretty familiar with it.
Yeah.
Do you think that had a big contribution to your anorexia?
Honestly,
And then I
I
have a
can,
second question.
yeah, I've been asked that a lot. And I think that it set the stage for perfectionism
Hmm.
and, needing to fit into a certain way. And like what ballet really taught me was like, you don't show if you're in pain. Like
Right.
you keep pushing no matter what your body's saying. So it taught me to override my body's signals as far as, and also for me, it was really like my way to express myself. I've always like I love movement, I love dance, I love all of that, and it was a huge part of who I was. And my eating disorder actually developed after I left the dance world,
Hmm.
um, because I lost that big piece of myself, like that identifying part of who I was, right? So it's a nuanced answer, and I think it can be different for everybody.
One of my friends in high school had anorexia pretty
Mhm.
severely, and she had a family tragedy that happened.
Yeah.
Her brother died when she was like 12 or 13
Mm,
from
yeah.
a disease. And he was healthy until he got that disease. And do you find that happens with other people that develop anorexia and they have some sort of family tragedy or something happens?
Definitely can be. Anorexia specifically is a really interesting, interesting mental disorder, right? Like there's back, this was, I mean, I struggled with it. Oh my God. more than 20 years ago, 25, 30
Yeah.
years ago, a long time ago at this point is when it developed. And, back then it was like, you just want to look like the models in the magazine. And it's like,
Mhm.
no, what? That is not it at all. So it's really complicated. It's highly heritable. That often runs in families. there's
Do
a
you
huge
think it runs in families because the social pressure of women to be thin? And if you've got a
I
mother that's never been diagnosed with it and has been controlling her eating for her entire life,
yeah.
do you think that has anything to do with it?
It's possible, it's possible. I think it's just so much more complicated than we can understand, you know? Like, there's biology and then the psychology and then because a lot of things, like, overlap, right? Like, other things like anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, ADHD, like, all these things, like, kinda go all
To
in
get
one little basket. Yeah, so it's just an interesting topic, like and I don't think anybody really has the answer on why some people develop eating disorders and some people don't, you know? Like, you can
Mhm.
have the exact same things happen to you, and one person has it and one person doesn't, so it's like, what's the
What's
deal, you know? Yeah,
mm.
it's interesting.
Well, this isn't about anorexia, this show, so we're gonna move on,
Oh,
but
that's
I have a
possible,
lot
yeah,
more other things that I have a lot of
yeah.
more thoughts about that. So, would you like to continue more of your story? Because we sort of, took a little left turn there, and so you went in, you told your husband very endearingly, and then what happened?
Yeah, so I had mentioned that I had never kissed a woman prior to that,
Mhm.
and, I was not ready to end my marriage. Both those things were true. And so what we did was we opened the marriage for me to go explore, as what he tried to kindly call it. And so we did that for a little while, and it was not a good choice for my life. Like,
Mhm.
I think it's a very common path that women tend to take, because again, both those things can be true. Like, you know your truth, and you're not ready to let go of the life that you've built, and, like, that's okay.
Well,
Like,
yeah, and also too, people don't realize, like, you're inviting a whole nother person into your marriage,
ooh, it
especially if you have a and also too, people who have been monogamous their whole life don't take into account, like, jealousy, negotiation, all that stuff like that, and I have come to see opening your marriage or beginning to practice polyamory after
yeah,
you've been monogamous as bargaining as part of the grief stage.
it's what it was, yeah,
Yeah,
and, maybe 6 months that we hung out in that stage, and it was probably the worst time of my life. Like, I st
imagine.
it oh, it was I mean, old behaviors that I hadn't done in years started coming up, and that's when I really found, like, breath and somatic work because I couldn't like, I was a mess, right? Like, it
Yeah,
was
of
just
course.
it was it's one of those things again, like, you know deep inside, but you're not ready to let it go,
Mhm.
and so it was awful. It was I just 10 out of 10, do not recommend,
Well, good, because my co-coach and I, Barbara and I are always like, "Please don't do an open marriage," because
oh my god.
we've never and I actually was on another podcast called
Mhm.
Our Path, which is from the straight spouse side, and, the woman there was like, "Please don't do an open mar" like,
It
we're both telling you, both sides are telling you, it doesn't work.
it
It's temporary,
it
and
yeah,
some people can do it for a year and year and a half, and it can be relatively okay. Those are very few and far in between. Most people,
yeah.
I'm gonna swear, it's a shit show. It
It
really
blew
yeah,
up. It
yeah.
blew up. Like,
Your husband couldn't handle it, and
no, no, it was and I couldn't handle it either. Like,
yeah,
it's like I learned 2 things from that experiment, I guess, if you wanna say. I learned I am very much a lesbian. I am very much monogamous. Like,
yeah.
you know what? At the end of the day, I learned those 2 things,
Yeah,
and so I don't regret it, and also, like, for me, like, I tried everything to save my marriage, right? Like, save my marriage. Like, you can't have a baby to save a marriage. You can't open your marriage to save your marriage either, but
marriage.
I didn't know that at the time. But eventually, we just decided to call it, like, maybe a year, 6 months to a year after me initially coming out to him. We just couldn't it
Just
wasn't
yeah.
mm-mm, just wasn't good, and, so, yeah, then we got divorced, and I am happily divorced, been out now for 3, 4 years,
Mhm.
just really, yeah, happy.
So you said during that time you discovered somatic and somatic breath work.
Yeah,
So let's talk about that.
yeah,
What is it?
Yeah. In its most simple form, it is a way to get into your body.
Mhm.
Breath work for me was the vehicle to start to actually feel what was happening in here. Because
Mhm.
again, I was so disconnected. Like, even knowing that I was a lesbian, I was still so disconnected because I was afraid. Like,
Mhm.
anytime I'm a big feeler, right? Like, I've got big feelings. I absorb, like, I feel a lot of things, and, the story that I told myself was anytime I feel things, it's too much. Like, I can't handle it. I'm gonna, do some sort of maladaptive behavior to, like, get out of, like, feeling so intensely. Um, and I remember the first time I was doing breath work with my coach, and they said to me, because I was starting to, like, amp up, right? Like, I was starting to feel, like, overwhelmed. Yeah, yeah, like, "Oh my god, what is happening?" And they looked at me and they were like, "Keep breathing, don't let it get stuck." And I was like, "Okay, okay." So I stayed with my breath, and guess what happened?
What?
The feeling moved.
Mhm.
I was okay, and I didn't die. And I
Mhm.
didn't crumble. And I was like, "Oh my god, what is this? This is magical, magical stuff." And, um, yeah, that was when I was like, "Okay, there is something here."
Mhm.
And that was the beginning of my journey with breath work, and then I got trained, and then now, all the things, but that was the first moment that I was like, "Oh my god, this works." And it was just huge, yeah.
And so the somatic part, which is
Mhm.
about exploring your body and finding where pain
Yeah,
and sadness and happiness and joy live in your
yeah,
body. Tell
yeah.
us about that experience because breath work and body work, somatic work often go hand in hand, but they
For sure.
are also separate entities too.
They
Right?
are. Yeah, they are. I have 2 different, yeah. I use them together, but yeah, they are very different. Like, breath is the way to get into the body oftentimes.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, Trauma, and I'm using that term just everybody has trauma, right? Like, we're not just talking about the big T stuff, right? Like, the
Like
things that
the
you
little T trauma. Yeah. Yeah, we all have.
Yeah, exactly. Too much, too fast, too soon. It's my favorite definition of trauma. Um, and, everybody has trauma. Trauma lives in your body.
Mhm.
It lives in your physical body, and, so often humans in our society, like, we just shut it off, like, not even people, like, not even, like, everybody does it, right? Like, we don't allow ourselves to feel the things, move the things, and release the things, and
Mhm.
that's what somatic work does. It gets you into your body and locates where the things are stored, and then you move it through. Like,
Mhm.
it's really that simple. It sounds so simple, right? It's a process of, like, regulating your nervous system, through the body. Like,
Mhm.
I love somatic work. It is so much of, like, I mean, I've done talk therapy for, like, 25 years, probably longer than that at this point. My math is not great. Um, but I never actually felt better, you know?
Well, I understand because about 20 I did talk therapy about 20 years
Yeah,
and I'm done. I've said everything I need to say. And so I started working with a somatic therapist.
mhm,
Unfortunately, she had to move, which sort of sucked, right after I started working with her. But
yeah,
it's something I'm going to pursue again because even though we only had a couple sessions where we really got into the somatic part, it was helpful. It really was. Like long-term memory that I had to like forgive myself for and stuff like that came when I was tapping on my shoulder. And
right?
and like I hadn't thought about that in 40 years.
No.
And so I really believe that, and I also went through a lot of trauma last year. And so I like that was one of the reasons why I wanted to start somatic work is because I felt so traumatized that I was like, and I just there's nothing more to say. I mean, I've said everything I can say about this situation. And I know that it was so traumatic that it is now stored in my body, and I want to get it out.
It, I'm not dissing talk therapy at all,
No,
right?
either
Like,
am I. I
love-
believe talk therapy. I did it for 20
totally.
years. Super
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
And also, right, like that's one thing I've really leaned into these past several years is like two things that make seem opposite can both be true, right? Like I didn't ever start to feel better until I got into my body. And
Right.
I didn't ever start to fully understand my truth and the healing journey that everybody talks about, this elusive healing journey for me was I had to get into my body. I had to start connecting to it. And I didn't know how. Like
Hmm.
people would say that to me, and I was like, I don't get it. Like
Hmm.
I do not understand how to feel what this is feeling. Like I just didn't understand. And so by doing breath work, doing somatic work, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what you mean. And it's interesting too, like you mentioned that you had a memory come up from whenever you said, and it's like we don't often know what is still here, like what needs to be dealt with. And I remember doing a somatic session. It was actually during one of my trainings, and I was like getting mad at what was coming up because I was like, I've dealt with that. Like, do you know
But
how many freaking times I have talked about this exact scenario?
it's in your body.
And I mean, it was really cool actually, but the
Well,
time I,
as humans, we are intellectual, emotional, spiritual, and physical. So that idea of whatever you were thinking about, you had dealt with intellectually and maybe emotionally a bunch of times as well. But you needed to deal with it physically, and you
yeah,
also have to deal with it spiritually too. But that's a whole nother ballgame.
totally. Yeah. Yeah.
But it makes a lot of sense. And I can understand your rage because a lot of times you're like, I've dealt with this. I don't want to talk about my parents doing this anymore. I'm done. I'm
Yeah.
done.
I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. So let me ask you, let me think about this question. Why is it important for late in life people to engage in alternative, and I'm going to call it an alternative, though I think it's very mainstream, alternative therapy, like such as somatics and breath work? Why do you recommend any late in life queer, and late in life is self-defined, 25 to 70 plus, we don't care. Why is it important?
Oh my gosh. To me, there is just such a connection between having overrode our sexuality is
Yeah,
biological, right?
yeah, biological
And
in a
you
small,
know,
yeah,
yeah,
sort
yeah.
of.
There's a component of it
There's
that's
a
like,
biological component to it. Yes, definitely.
yeah. And as a later in life lesbian, later in life queer, however you want to define it, like you've overrode that. You've overrode the most basic thing, right? One of the most basic things. And you got to get back into your body. You've got to get in there and heal the things that need to be healed. And then you can really start to live your life authentically. Like that's what this whole journey is about, right? Like healing is living authentically in
Mhm,
whatever authenticity is for you. But we don't know what that is until we get in there.
mhm,
And just such a firm believer that it really lives in our bodies. And until we're able to get into our bodies and kind of like dig through the muck that's in there, it's
mhm,
like you can only heal to this far, right?
mhm.
You can only go this deep until you really get in there and start to look at the things, look at the things, and then move through the things. It's really what it's about is just get in, look at it, move it.
Can you give some tips for people who've never done this and they're like, "Yeah, I'm curious," and may not go see a practitioner right this second, but
Yeah.
like says that wants to try it and
Mhm.
for themselves? What would you
Yeah.
recommend?
First of all, one of my favorite things to do is when you want to start trying it and you're like, I don't know what to do, often you can be a little bit like this, right? Like a little amped up, a little like this. So one of my favorite things to have people do just starting out is just shake it out.
Mm-hmm.
Like just shake out your body, shake out
Mm-hmm.
your arms, shake out your legs, do whatever you need to do to like move it, right? The whole goal of it is to move the things, right?
The
So
energy.
shake out your body, shake out your limbs,
Mm-hmm.
and then stop,
Mm-hmm.
stop, and then see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So what I like to tell people to do is just get curious.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we spent so much time running from our bodies, being afraid of what they're telling us, and what would happen if we just stopped
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
got curious about
Mm-hmm.
what our bodies are telling us?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I find that curiosity is very, very helpful if we're not afraid
Mhm.
of the answers.
Yeah, it is. It is. And not judging. You know,
Yeah.
I hear that. It's hard not to judge.
Yeah.
It's hard not to judge ourselves, but
So you do this shaking thing and you stop, and then maybe it's a positive experience. Maybe it's a negative experience. So then what do you recommend? So I want to make sure we get people
yeah,
through
absolutely. So
it so that we don't leave somebody
no,
re-traumatized
no, no,
again.
no. The okay, so if you start to feel too much,
Mm-hmm.
this is actually one of my favorite tips, just in general, not even just when you're feeling too much, right? Go out. Don't get out of here and look out. So open your eyes and just let your eyes go to wherever they want to go in your environment.
Mm-hmm.
Bonus points if you're going to be outside, just because I'm Pacific Northwest gal. So every time I'm outside, I'm like, yes, this is amazing to me. But if you just look out, open your eyes, look out, let your eyes go where they want to go, find something pleasing, whatever that may be. Like right now, I'm looking at my hammock, and it's a rainbow hammock because, of course, it's a rainbow hammock, and that feels good to me, right? Like that feels good. So do that. That's actually one of my favorite tips in general to give people throughout the day. Like if you work at a computer, if you work, any time throughout the day, that you can pause and just like look around your environment.
Mm-hmm.
It's very calming to the nervous system.
How do people find someone who's qualified to do this? Because a lot of times there's people hanging shingles all over the place, but they may not be as qualified. What do you want to look for when you're looking for a somatic or a breathwork person?
Certifications. You
Yeah,
really want to look for certifications. I know that's one of my least favorite things about it.
like
Is
the coaching world. I
it's
understand. Yeah.
can get a little dicey in there. I'm going to call out the program that I'm doing currently. It's somatic experiencing. And that is it, that is the top tier in my
Mhm.
little humble opinion. That's my favorite one to look for. And actually, the somatic experiencing website has a list of practitioners on there.
Oh, that's
Uh,
cool.
it is cool. It is cool.
So you can find somebody. That's really lovely. I like
Yeah,
that.
there aren't a ton though, so that's kind of, but most people can see people virtually as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it can be a little bit challenging. So I always encourage people to, before you work with somebody, like feel them out.
Yeah,
Like stalk their
absolutely.
Instagram, like book a book a 10-minute call, like whatever they have available.
Absolutely. Yeah, do that.
It do that, please do that because I'm not saying anything like against other people. It's just you're gonna jive better with other people than you are with and there are different levels of qualification, right? Like
Right.
the somatic experiencing is a 3-year program.
Right.
Like they it's a 3-year program.
Pretty serious.
It is,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I'm in that right now, and it's been an amazing journey. Like it's been huge. So yeah.
So if people want to work with you or just
Mhm.
follow you on Instagram or social, how can they?
Yeah. Reclaiming Juliana is my Instagram handle. And can I share a little story about that actually?
Sure.
So my name is Juliana, and I went by Julie for years, years and years and years, right? Like my whole
Yeah.
life, I went by Julie. And then when I came out, I was like, you know what? My name is Juliana, and I went by. I started to go by Juliana, and so
It's a
I made my.
beautiful name, by the way.
Thank you. I
I
like
love
it.
that name.
So yeah, reclaiming Juliana because I'm not Julie, I'm Juliana, and it was just all about reclaiming my authentic self because
Mhm,
that's I just when somebody like I just find such beauty and authenticity.
mhm,
Like
mhm.
it is so
It's the key.
it is that
And the thing is people, whether, for you and I, our queerness was part of our authentic journey. For other people, it's other stuff.
totally
And
yeah.
and I think that's the secret, what late in life lesbians who do the work when they come out. There are people who just come out and don't do the work. But there are
Yeah, yeah.
and that's fine. That's your we're not
That's fun.
we're not dissing anybody, but there are people that just come out and then just switch their partners and not do any of the emotional work about why they came out so late or anything like that. They don't try to figure any of those pieces out. That is okay. That is your journey. We are not judging you. But I do think that's what the later in life lesbians know, is that journey to authenticity. First of all, is hard. Um,
Hmm.
no mud, no flour. So
Hmm.
you have to go through the mud, like Juliana was talking about her open marriage, and that was really muddy.
Super
Uh,
fun.
yeah. And the thing is that when you go through this journey and you embrace authenticity, you realize like how important it is, and how if we all did it, like everybody in the world did it, showed up authentically, we would be a peaceful world.
Yeah.
We would have peace. And so that's why I'm very passionate about finding people find their authentic selves. Even if I can just make peace in some small area of the world, I can't
Yeah.
change the world. But I think authenticity is the key to happiness.
Yes, I completely agree. And, I've said many times before, it's like healing is living authentically.
Well,
Like,
and also too, I did say it's a key to happiness, but the thing is, things are not always going to be happy when you're authentic.
oh
I want
God.
to make people,
Yeah.
but you're able to roll with the ups and downs in life
Yes.
with more compassion for yourself
You
and
know,
compassion and grace for everybody else.
I hear a lot of one of the misconceptions I hear a lot about, there's this big thing right now about regulating your nervous system, right? Nervous system regulation. And the false belief around that is that means you're going to be chill all the time. That is not what that means. It means you can handle the range of human emotions. So like that is what that means. And then you can go up, you can go down, you can go up, you can go down, and then you can kind of settle back down in the middle when things are safe to do so. But like that's what regulating your nervous system is. And living authentically is it's parallel, right? Like being able to handle all the range. So yeah, thank you for that.
Juliana, did you have a coming out song?
Oh my God, yes. My favorite song. So the Chicks. The Chicks is called My Best Friend's Wedding.
Mm-hmm.
It's what was really, really powerful for me to listen to because it was like Run with the Wildfire. Like it was one of my favorite songs to listen to when I was like, I can't do this, I can't do this. So yeah, The Chicks, My Best Friend's Wedding. Check out that one. It's really good.
I'm going to.
Yeah.
A book or a movie that really changed your lens and what you look upon the world.
Yes, our dear friend Glennon Doyle, and which you have probably heard multiple times. But that book was really like just a solid representation of like where I was, right? Like,
Well, and it hit the world right as the pandemic started.
which
Like,
is,
I
yep,
went to see her the day before she canceled her tour. And so she was here in Nashville, and then she canceled the tour the next day because of the pandemic. This was like
yeah,
February, I think.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so yeah, it hit I mean, like it was synergy, right? It
It,
hit the world, everybody's sitting
right.
at home, and everybody's
Yep,
reading this book. And now
yep. I audio booked it when I was walking, just because I had the
you
little,
start crying.
yep, just walking, crying, postpartum too. So that was solid time. Yep.
How would you describe your life today?
Oh my God, happy.
Mm-hmm.
And that word, authentic, I think is a better word. You know, I've never felt this aligned with who I am,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to show up as myself in whatever space I'm in, right? Like now I've got 2 little kids, and it's so, I want them to know that whoever they are is perfect and beautiful just as they are, right? Um, yeah, it's amazing when you give yourself that permission to be who you are without any expectation of who that person's going to be.
Right.
It's because, yeah,
It's
it's different.
exciting.
Yeah, it is. And this version of me has a lot of compassion for the other versions of me that just, she didn't know.
Yeah.
She didn't
She didn't
know.
know. She didn't know. I get that. I have a lot of versions. My 15 inner children, I have
Yeah.
they just didn't know. And they weren't, and also too, in my case, they just weren't given the tools to know
Yeah.
because their parents were involved in, my mom and dad were involved in their own dance and very
Yeah.
little attention to me.
Yeah.
And, and so they just did. And also I have such great compassion and love for my parents. I have no anger towards them.
Yeah.
I did. I did.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
did, but I don't anymore because I just realized that they're in the same systems that we're all caught in, right?
Yeah.
And they did the best they could with what they knew. And
Exactly.
that's, that it really helps you love your people that may have failed you when you were younger, but it
Mhm.
helps you be able to forgive them, which is actually a wonderful thing. You
Yeah.
don't have to have a relationship with them if that seems just horrible to you,
Yeah.
but it also helps you let go of all the
Yeah.
pain,
For
which is
sure. For
so.
sure.
Juliana Allen, Somatic breathwork facilitator. It was wonderful to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your wisdom. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to Coming Out and Beyond, LGBTQIA plus stories with Anne-Marie Zanzal. New episodes of the Coming Out and Beyond podcast drop every other Friday. You can tune in at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and at annemariezanzal.com. Be sure to hit subscribe when tuning in so you never miss an episode. And for more resources, articles, videos, and a free downloadable guide for coming out later in life, visit annemariezanzal.com.